Imagine trusting your own family only for that trust to destroy your life forever. Picture this: you're 20 years old, you have dreams, you have plans, you trust the people who raised you, who fed you, who promised to protect you, and then one night everything changes. One night that trust became the weapon used to break you in ways no one can see. This is Laura's story, and what happened to her could happen to anyone. Laura was just like you. She had a life, she had hopes, she was trying to build something for herself. She trusted her aunt Becky more than anyone in the world. Becky was family, Becky was safety, Becky was supposed to be the one person who would never hurt her. But that birthday night, everything Laura believed about family, about safety, about trust, shattered into pieces. She's still trying to put back together. What happened that night broke Laura in ways no one could see. It nearly ended her life, and for years she carried that pain in silence, wondering if anyone would ever believe her. Before we continue, comment below where you're watching from. Let's build a community of awareness. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Laura grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew everyone. She was that quiet girl in high school who kept to herself, always had a book in her hand, always dreamed of doing something bigger than the town she grew up in. She wanted to be a teacher. She wanted to help kids learn, to make a difference. After graduation, she moved to the city to attend community college. It wasn't easy, money was tight. She worked part-time at a coffin shop just to afford her tiny studio apartment and tuition. Some days she had to choose between buying groceries or paying for textbooks. That's the kind of struggle Laura lived with every single day. But she never complained. She was determined. She believed that if she just worked hard enough, things would get better. And in those difficult times, there was one person who always had her back: Auntie Becky. Becky was her mother's older sister. She lived about 30 minutes away in a nicer apartment of the city. Becky was successful. She had a good job, a nice house, and she always seemed to have everything together. More importantly, Becky cared about Laura, or at least that's what Laura thought. When Laura couldn't afford rent one month, Becky helped her out. When Laura's car broke down, Becky lent her money for repair. When Laura felt alone and overwhelmed, Becky would invite her over for dinner, tell her everything would be okay, and remind her that family sticks together. Laura trusted Becky completely. She saw Becky as more than an aunt. She was a mentor, a second mother, someone who genuinely wanted the best for her. Becky treated Laura like her own daughter. She introduced Laura to her friends, took her to a nice restaurant, made her feel special and valued. For someone who struggled every day just to make ends meet, that attention meant everything. Laura felt safe around Becky. She felt protected. She never imagined that the person she trusted most, the person who made her feel like family actually mattered, would become the source of her deepest pain. She never imagined that trust could be weaponized, but it was, and it destroyed her. It was March 15th, Becky's 42nd birthday party. Becky had been planning this party for weeks. She invited Laura. Of course, Laura didn't really want to go. She had exams coming up, and honestly, she wasn't big on parties. But Becky insisted. Come on, Laura. It's my birthday. I want you there. Your family. And because Laura trusted Becky, because she didn't want to disappoint the one person who had always been there for her, she said yes. She showed up that Saturday night around 8 o'clock. The house was already full of people. Music was loud. There were alcohol everywhere. Most of the guests were Becky's age, people Laura didn't know. She felt out of place immediately. But Becky greeted her with a big hug and a drink. Relax, sweetheart, have fun. You worked too hard. Laura took the drink. To be polite, she wasn't much of a drinker. She didn't want to seem rude. The night went on. More people showed up. Music got louder. Laura stayed in the corner, mostly nursing that one drink, checking her phone, waiting for an appropriate time to leave. Then Becky came over with another woman. Her name was Vivian. She was Becky's close friend, someone Laura had met a few times before. Vivian was friendly enough, asking about school and Laura's life. At first, it seems like a normal small talk, but then Becky suggested they all move to the back room where it was more quiet. Laura hesitated. Something felt off, but Becky was insistent. Come on, it's too loud out here. Let's just talk for a bit. Laura followed. She trusted Becky. Why wouldn't she? They went to a room at the back of the house. It was smaller, dimly light, just the three of them. And that's when things change. Vivian closed the door. Becky poured more drink, strong drink. She handed one to Laura and insisted she drink it. Come on, sweetie, loosen up, it's a party. Laura tried to refuse, but Becky kept pushing, kept insisting, kept making her feel like she was being difficult. Laura started feeling dizzy. The room was spinning. She realized too late that there was something in that drink, something more than just alcohol. She tried to stand up, tried to leave, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She stumbled. Becky caught her, guided her back to the couch. Just relax, Laura. We are going to take care of you. And then the nightmare began. What happened in that room that night is something Laura still struggled to put into words. Both Becky and Vivian violated her own aunt, the person she trusted more than anyone in the world. And Vivian, someone who acted like a friend. They touched her in ways that made her skin crawl. They held her down when she tried to fight. They told her to stop resisting, that she was being dramatic, that this was normal, that she should just let it happen. Laura tried to scream, but her voice wouldn't work. The drug in her system made everything feel like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Her mind couldn't process what was happening. This was Becky, her aunt, the woman who was supposed to protect her, and Becky was doing this to her. Becky was the one violating her trust in the most horrific way. Laura's body shut down. She dissociated, her mind separating from what was being done to her body. She stared at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face, feeling everything and nothing at the same time. By the time it was over, Laura was numb. She couldn't move. She couldn't think. She just lay there broken, trying to understand how the person she loved could do something so evil. Becky acted like nothing had happened. She helped Laura get dressed, fix her hair, and told her to clean herself up. Vivian left the room without a word, as if what they had just done was completely normal. Becky looked Laura in the eyes and said, "This stays between us, you understand? No one will believe you anyway, and if you tell anyone, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a liar. I'll tell them you came on to us, that you were drunk and making things up. Who do you think people will believe? Me or some broke college kid?" Laura wanted to fight back. She wanted to scream, but she had nothing left, so she stayed silent. Laura left that house in a daze. She drove home, not even remembering how she got there. She sat in her apartment, on the floor, in the dark, trying to make sense of it all. But nothing made sense. The person who was supposed to protect her had violated her, and Laura didn't know what to do. So she did what so many survivors do. She stayed silent. She buried it deep. She pretended it never happened. But trauma doesn't just disappear, it festers. Laura thought that maybe if she just avoided Becky, she could move on. She stopped answering calls. She made excuses not to visit. But Becky wouldn't let her disappear quietly. Becky kept calling, kept texting, kept showing up at her apartment unannounced. She acted like nothing had happened. She brought groceries, said she was worried about Laura, said she missed her. And every time she reminded Laura of one thing: "You need me, Laura. You know that. Without me, where would you be? Remember when I helped you with rent? Remember when I helped fix your car? You owe me." Becky's words were laced with manipulation. And then came the threat: "If you ever tell anyone what happened, I'll make sure everyone knows you're unstable. I'll tell them you're on drugs. I'll ruin you." Laura believed her because Becky had power. Becky had connection, and Laura had nothing. So Laura stayed silent. But the weight of that silence was crushing her. She couldn't escape the memory of that night. It played in her mind on repeat. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back in that room. Every time someone touched her shoulder, she flinched. Every time she saw Becky's name on her phone, her heart raced with fear. She stopped going to classes. She stopped showing up to work. She barely ate. She barely slept. She just existed, moving through life like a ghost, haunted by what had been done to her. Her friends noticed something was wrong. They asked if she was okay. Laura lied. She said she was just stressed about school. She said she was fine, but she wasn't fine. She was breaking apart from the inside. The girl who once dreamed of being a teacher, who once smiled and had hope, was disappearing. In her place was someone hollow, someone who had learned that trust was a lie and family was a trap. And the worst part, Laura blamed herself. She thought if she had been smarter, if she had just seen the sign, if she had just said no louder, maybe none of this would have happened. That's what trauma does. It makes you believe the abuse is your fault, and Laura carried that burden every single day. By the next 6 weeks, Laura had stopped caring about anything. She dropped out of college. She quit her job. She stopped answering calls from anyone, including Becky. Laura felt like a prisoner in her own life. She spent most days lying in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering why she was still alive. The dream she once had felt like it belonged to someone else. Teaching kids, making a difference. Those were fantasies from a lifetime ago, from a version of herself that no longer existed. The depression was suffocating. Laura couldn't remember the last time she felt anything other than numbness or pain. She had constant nightmares. Even when she managed to sleep, she would wake up in a panic, drenched in sweat, reliving that first night over and over again. She started having intrusive thoughts about ending it all, about how much easier it would be to just not exist anymore. At first, she pushed those thoughts away, but as the days went on, they became louder, more persistent, more convincing. What was the point of living if this was all life had to offer? Pain, violation, silence. Laura felt worthless. She felt dirty. She felt broken beyond repair. One night in late May, Laura made a decision. She couldn't do this anymore. She couldn't carry this pain. She couldn't live with what had been done to her. She couldn't face another day of Becky coming to threaten her again. She wrote a note. It wasn't long, just a few lines. "I'm sorry, I couldn't be strong enough. I hope you all understand." She didn't name names. She didn't explain what had happened, because even in her final moments, Laura was still protecting Becky, still keeping the secret, still believing that no one would care, that no one would believe her. She took all the pills she had in her apartment, pain medication she had been prescribed after a minor injury months ago, sleeping pills she had bought when the nightmare got too bad. She swallowed them all with a glass of water, then lay down on her bed and waited. She thought about her mom, about her little brother, about the life she could have had, and then she closed her eyes. But Laura's story didn't end that night, because there was someone who cared, someone who had noticed the change in her. His name was Marcus. Marcus was a guy Laura had met briefly at the coffee shop where she used to work. He was a regular customer, always kind, always polite. He had asked her out once, but Laura had said no. She wasn't in a place to date anyone, but Marcus never pushed. He just remained friendly. After Laura stopped showing up to work, Marcus got worried. He asked the manager what happened. The manager said Laura quit but seemed off. Marcus had a bad feeling. He didn't know Laura well, but something told him to check on her. He found her address through a mutual friend and decided to stop by. When he knocked and got no answer, he noticed the door was slightly open. He called out her name, still no answer. He pushed the door open and found Laura unconscious on her bed, an empty pill bottle on the nightstand. Marcus immediately called 911. He stayed with her, shaking her, trying to wake her up, begging her to hold on. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They rushed her to the hospital. It was close, too close, but they saved her life. That moment, that thin line between death and hope, changed everything, because for the first time in months, someone cared enough to notice, someone cared enough to act. And even though Laura didn't know it yet, Marcus had just given her a second chance, a chance to survive, a chance to heal, a chance to finally speak her truth. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Laura woke up in the hospital 3 days later. She was confused at first. She didn't understand where she was or why she was still alive. A nurse told her what happened, that a young man named Marcus had found her and called for help, that she had been lucky. Laura didn't feel lucky. She felt angry, angry that she was still here, angry that she had to face this life again. But then Marcus came to visit. He sat by her bed and he didn't ask questions. He didn't demand explanation. He just said, "I'm glad you're okay. You don't have to talk about anything. I just want you to know that someone cares." And something about those words broke through the wall Laura had built around herself. For the first time in months, she cried. She cried so hard that she couldn't breathe. And Marcus just sat there, letting her release all that pain she had been holding in. Over the next few weeks, Marcus visited her every day. He brought her books, her favorite snack, anything to make her feel less alone. He talked about random things, movie, music, life. He never pushed her to open up, but slowly, Laura started to trust him, not the way she had trusted Becky. This was different, this was gentle, this was real. One evening, about 3 weeks after her suicide attempt, Laura finally told Marcus everything. She told him about Becky, about that birthday party night, about Vivian, about the manipulation, about the threat that followed, about how trapped she felt, about how worthless she believed she was. And Marcus listened. He didn't interrupt, he didn't judge, he didn't tell her she was lying or exaggerating. He just listened. And when she finished, he looked her in the eyes and said, "None of this was your fault. What they did to you was evil, and you deserve justice." Those words, that validation, that belief gave Laura something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she could survive this, that maybe she could fight back. Marcus helped her find a therapist who specialized in trauma. Laura was hesitant at first. Talking about what happened felt impossible, but her therapist was patient, gentle, and knowledgeable. She helped Laura understand that what she experienced was abuse, that Becky had manipulated her, that none of it was Laura's fault. Slowly, Laura started to reclaim peace of herself. She started to see that she wasn't broken. She was wounded, and wound can heal. With Marcus' support, Laura made the hardest decision of her life. She decided to report Becky to the police. She was terrified. What if they didn't believe her? What if Becky retaliated? What if everyone turned against her? But Marcus reminded her, "You're not alone anymore. I'm here, and what happened to you matters." She can't keep getting away with this. Laura walked into the police station on a cold October morning. Her hands were shaking, her voice was trembling, but she told her story. She gave them dates, names, details. She told them everything. And for the first time, Laura felt heard. The detective assigned to her case was a woman named Officer Janet. Janet had years of experience with cases like this. She believed Laura. She told Laura she was brave for coming forward. She promised to do anything she could to bring Becky to justice. The investigation took months. They interviewed witnesses. They gathered evidence. They looked into Becky's background and found something disturbing. Laura wasn't the first. There were other young women, other nieces, other family members who had been victimized by Becky and Vivian. Some had been too afraid to speak up. Others had to try but weren't believed. But now with Laura's testimony, they had a case. They found evidence of the drug used that night. They found text message between Becky and Vivian discussing Laura. They found other victims willing to testify. In February, almost a year after that birthday night, both Becky and Vivian were arrested. Laura didn't see it happen, but when Officer Janet called her to tell her, Laura felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: relief. It wasn't over yet. The trial was still ahead, but for the first time, Laura felt like she had her voice back, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it away again. The trial was one of the hardest things Laura ever had to endure. Sitting in that courtroom, having to recount every detail of what Becky and Vivian did to her, having to face both of them across the room. It was traumatic all over again. Becky's lawyer tried to paint Laura as unstable, as vindictive, as someone making up story for attention. They brought up her suicide attempt, trying to use it against her. They questioned her credibility. They tried to make her seem like the problem. Vivian's defense tried a different approach, claiming she was just following Becky's lead, that she was manipulated too. But Laura had something she didn't have before. She had support. Marcus sat in the courtroom every single day. Her therapist prepared her for the questions. Officer Janet reassured her that The evidence was strong. And when it was Laura's turn to testify, she stood up and told her truth. She looked at the jury and spoke clearly despite her shaking hands and raising heart. She told them about the trust she had in Becky, about the birthday night, about being drugged, about the assault by both women, about the manipulation, about the continued threat and harassment, about how it nearly cost her her life. And when Becky's lawyer tried to discredit her, Laura didn't back down. She stayed calm. She stayed strong. She told them, I have nothing to gain from this except justice. I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this for attention. I'm doing this because what they did to me was wrong, and I don't want them to do it to anyone else. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Other victims came forward and testified. The evidence was overwhelming. Toxicology report confirmed the presence of date rape drugs in Laura's system that night. Text messages showed premeditation. On a rainy afternoon in late April, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty. Both Becky and Vivian were found guilty on multiple counts of sexual assault, drugging, abuse of trust, and manipulation. The judge sentenced Becky to 18 years in prison. Vivian got 15. When the sentence was read, Laura didn't feel joy. She didn't feel triumph. She just felt exhausted. But she also felt something else. She felt free. Free from the fear that Becky could show up at her door. Free from the manipulation. Free from the lies. After the trial, Laura focused on healing. She continued therapy. She joined a support group for survivors of abuse. She met other women who had been through similar experience. And for the first time, she didn't feel alone. She realized that what happened to her wasn't unique. That trauma like this happened to so many people. And that healing was possible. Marcus remained by her side. He never pushed for more than Laura was ready to give. He just supported her, and over time their friendship grew into something deeper, something built on trust, respect, and genuine care. Laura started to believe in love again, not the toxic, manipulative version Becky had shown her, but real love, the kind that uplifts and heals. Laura re-enrolled in college. She changed her major to social work. She wanted to help other survivors. She wanted to be the voice for people who felt like they had none. She wanted to turn her pain into purpose. It wasn't easy. There were days when the trauma crept back in, days when she had nightmares, days when she doubted herself. She kept going, but she had survived, and surviving meant something. It meant she was stronger than the people who tried to break her. Her scars remained. They would always be there, but they didn't define her. They were proof that she had fought, that she had endured, that she had risen from a darkness most people couldn't even imagine. Laura's story became one of resilience. She started speaking at events, sharing her experience to raise awareness about family abuse, about the importance of believing survivor, about the devastating impact of betrayal trauma. She wanted people to understand that abuse doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from people you trust the most, and that makes it even more dangerous, even more damaging. Laura's voice, once silenced, became a beacon for others. She showed people that it was okay to speak up, that it was okay to seek help, that survival was possible, and that justice, while difficult to obtain, was worth fighting for. Laura's story is painful. It's hard to hear, it's hard to process, but it carries a powerful message that we all need to understand. Silence protects abusers, not victims. When we stay silent, when we look away, when we doubt survivors, we allow predators to continue their harm. Becky used Laura's trust against her. She manipulated her, isolated her, and made her believe that no one would care. And for a long time, Laura believed that lie. But the truth is, people do care, people do believe, and justice is possible. If you or someone you know is going through something like this, please understand that it's not your fault. The abuse is never the victim's fault. No matter what the abusers say, no matter how much they manipulate you into thinking you're the problem, you're not. What's happening to you is wrong, and you deserve help. You deserve safety. You deserve to be believed. Reach out. Tell someone, a friend, a teacher, a counselor, a hotline. There are people who will listen, people who believe you, people who will help you. Don't carry this alone. Don't let shame silence you, because your voice matters. Your story matters. You matter. To everyone watching this, if you believe story like this should be told, subscribe for more real life story that educates, inspire, and protect. Share this video to spread awareness, because the more we talk about this issue, the more we shine a light on a darkness, the harder it becomes for abusers to hide. Let's build a community that supports survivors, that believes them, that fights for them. Laura found her voice, she found her strength, and now she uses it to help others to find theirs. Her scars remain, but her spirit became stronger. And that's the message we need to carry forward. Survival is possible, healing is possible, justice is possible. We just have to be brave enough to speak up and compassionate enough to listen.